There's not a more disrespected program in college football right now than Oklahoma. Last year was the worst season that they've had in over 26 years. They had injuries coming out of fall camp, which essentially ended their season before it even started. You were depleted on the offensive line. You were ravished at wide receiver to the point where you had to start a bunch of young guys who had no experience. And then you had no quarterback play. Oklahoma was trying to win games their first season in the SEC like they were Iowa. And you can't win that way. You can't win in college football's toughest conference being all defense and have no offense at all. Oklahoma is going to bounce back this season in a major way. Everything that hindered this squad last year has been addressed. You fixed the quarterback issue, bringing in John Mateer. You also have a new offensive coordinator and Ben Arbuckle, who follows John Mateer down to Norman. You have one of the best running backs that was available in the spring portal cycle in Jaden Ott from Cal. You are loaded at receiver. Deion Brooks is primed for a breakout season. We seem to forget how much of a stud he was at Purdue a few years ago. And we know with Brent Venables taking over the defense that this is going to continue to be an elite unit. You can't define what Oklahoma is going to be this season based off an all-time outlier with how bad last year was. And even if Brent Venables does flame out this year and the Sooners don't win too many games, that doesn't mean that Oklahoma is all of a sudden going to become irrelevant in the SEC. They're going to be the equivalent to what Nebraska has been in the Big Ten since they joined that conference, because Oklahoma has too much money and too many resources to be irrelevant in this new age of college football. If Brent Venables doesn't work out and they have to fire him, they got more than enough money. They'll go out and get a guy like a Fran Brown from Syracuse who just won 10 games in his first season. Or they could go down the street and get Rhett Lashley from SMU. Oklahoma has all of the resources to be an elite program in the SEC. This was already an elite SEC program before they even got to this conference. They were beating up on the Big 12. They won 10 games not too long ago, and they beat Texas as well. It's not as if Oklahoma is just incapable of being able to compete in the SEC. When you have no quarterback and you got a guy in Jackson Arnold who essentially was so bad at taking care of the football, you would have thought that he was colluding with Vegas to fix some of Oklahoma's games. You're not going to survive in this conference when you have to overcome that along with a bunch of injuries. There already are too many teams in the SEC that have quality rosters as it is. So when you go into the year down the majority of your top players due to injuries, it's a recipe for disaster in the SEC. Even Georgia had a down year last season. Now, although they were able to overcome that and still win this conference, that was because they have Kirby Smart. Brent Venables isn't Kirby Smart, but nobody is. That's why he's the undisputed #1 coach in college football right now. Unless you have an all-time great head coach, anybody would have suffered the same fate that Brent Venables did with how bad of a team Oklahoma was offensively. Having a great defense only gets you so far. Iowa wins in the Big Ten because you're not going up against a bunch of quality rosters week after week like what Oklahoma had to last season. You have to play Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, Alabama. It just was a season that Oklahoma just had to take on the chin, learn from, and be able to regroup. And that's exactly what they've done. This season, Brent Venables has assembled a borderline playoff team entering a crucial year of his Oklahoma tenure. With how good John Mateer is going to be, he should be Oklahoma's equivalent to what Cam Ward was for Miami last season. And I expect for the Sooners to at least win 9 games, and be a possible 3-loss team that gets into the CFP this year. This team has recruited incredibly well. Brent Venables has brought in 2 top 10 recruiting classes over his time here, and he also has done a really good job at developing talent and getting it to the next level. Oklahoma can't be defined by 2024 when there were so many other reasons for why that team was bad other than them being Oklahoma. Oklahoma's talked about like they're Northwestern or Vanderbilt or somebody like that, when they're not. This is a program that's been to the college football multiple times over the past decade. They've been in several New Year's Six bowl games. So I'm not about to call a team irrelevant because they make a move to a tougher conference solely based off the worst season that they've had in 26 years. Oklahoma is so hated right now because of how dominant they've been in the last decade that college football so badly wants them to all of a sudden be made irrelevant by the SEC when that's not going to happen. They just have way too much available at their disposal for them to become irrelevant in this conference. They are nothing like Nebraska. They are far more superior than what Nebraska is in terms of money to use and recruiting and the transfer portal, along with other resources. If a head coach right now, like Fran Brown, had to choose between coaching at Nebraska and coaching at Oklahoma, he's picking Oklahoma, which is why the comparison to Nebraska, I think, is just a little bit of exaggeration to me. Because even when Nebraska was in the Big 12, they still really weren't that good. So it's not really a surprise they've been as down and out as what they have over the last couple of years in the Big 10. They've also made a bunch of bad hires. Oklahoma hasn't made a bunch of bad hires. So unless Oklahoma continues to get it wrong at head coach, if Brent Venables does get the boot, that's the only way Oklahoma is truly going to fall off. Oklahoma is one of the best jobs in college football. You just have to be Gene Chizik level bad to fail as the head coach for this program with how good of a situation that Mark Stoops put this team in before he ended up giving it over to Lincoln Riley. Or Bob Stoops. I don't know if I got it wrong. Bob Stoops, Mark Stoops. I get them mixed up commonly, but you guys get my point. Oklahoma is built to survive in the SEC. They're not about to become Nebraska of this conference. They just have way too much for that to happen, and they're going to be really good this season.